than, that's better than, okay, I'm recording, but I'm not recording. I'm in the speaker, I should be in speaker view when we can't switch back and forth, can we?
Yeah, you can.
We can? Okay.
Yeah, you're the host, so just go to speaker view if you want.
But that'll switch the recording back and forth too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So it is 7:02. Maybe we'll give it a couple more minutes.
Sure.
Yeah. And Shelby, I see that you logged on like 2 hours ago or something.
She was testing it.
I set it up because my internet, I want to make sure it was all good. I could just turn it on without having to deal with it later.
Okay. All right.
Like the print, David?
Oh, yeah.
David helped me make that print for my client.
Oh, that's great.
She liked it, I assume.
She hasn't said so, but I think she has. I'm trying to get a hold of her. She's just been busy.
Okay. So we'll start in just a minute here, but in case you weren't here when everybody started to pop up, I'm going to ask you to all have photos that you want to share of birds and whatnot. And I know there's several of you. Obviously, you know who you are. That has a lot of them. So if you can pop up as we go through. I'm just going to go through some basic things, and so for some of you, it's going to be like, this is way too elementary, and for others of you, maybe this is the first time you've ever done this. But I'm not going to mute anybody, and if you have barking dogs or whatever, mute yourself. And
David,
yeah.
would you like to make me co-host so I can let people in while you're talking?
Oh yeah, I think, you know what? I think I set it up so that, because I haven't been letting people in.
Oh, okay. I thought I kept hearing the doorbell.
Oh.
Maybe that's why you keep hearing the doorbell.
Well, maybe that's why I kept hearing the doorbell. All right, I'm going to make you, I'm going to make you co-host.
Okay, well, if people are getting in just fine, then that's okay. I just thought you set up a waiting room because of the doorbell.
Oh, I thought I set it up without the waiting room.
No, there's a waiting room.
There is a waiting room.
It came up on the screen that we were waiting to be admitted into the meeting.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That was before I joined, right?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe, because I don't see a waiting room now.
Because I haven't been, letting people in.
Okay.
Everybody's just been popping in.
Great.
But you're co-host anyway, Kathy.
All right. Well, just in case we lose anything.
Okay. We have what, 31 people?
Yep.
Something like that. And so do we have 2 screens? Do we have?
Yeah.
We have 2 screens. Okay. So, I can't, let's see. I can see people on that screen and, well, whatever. Okay, let's get started. First of all, as you should all know, we have canceled the official field trip for tomorrow due to the COVID and whatnot. I understand that there will still be some people going. I nor the club has any control over that. So unofficially, you do whatever you want. But we are canceling, and we're trying to stay within the guidelines. Just to let you know. Tomorrow is probably going to be a good day with the rain that we've had and possibility of a little bit of fog. We'll get some atmospherics, and it's going to be clear weather. It'll be cool and cold where, like it is a lot of the time. I think Kathy went the other day, and you said you were freezing, right?
Yeah, Barbara and Bill and I went. Bill Summers, and it was downright cold. I mean, bone-chilling cold.
All right.
Yeah.
So just be aware if you go down, you know, it's a good, oftentimes I bring those hand warmers that you stick in your gloves.
Good idea.
And I have those sometimes because your hands will get so cold outside. I find that's helpful. I always have a pair of some sort of gloves that I can still operate the camera with. So that's another good thing for the winter migration. Also, Bill Wages went, what,
Yesterday, yeah.
yesterday. Maybe, Bill, you can tell them about what you found.
Yesterday morning was very foggy when I got there. And the first place I went to, there was no birds. Now it's the Casumnas area. So I hung out there for a while, went to the preserve park and all that, and didn't really see much of anything. So I ran over to Woodbridge, and there was lots of birds all the way up and down the road on both sides. So,
What time were you there, Bill?
at Woodbridge,
But when you started?
I was there about 7 a.m. at Casumnas.
Okay.
Very
What time
cold.
were you at Woodbridge?
Woodbridge, I probably got there around 10 o'clock or so. Because I hiked around the visitor center just to see something, if there was anything behind there. There was nothing back there, just a long, cold hike. And so I decided to go down to Woodbridge, and then that's where everything was at. So
Where's Woodbridge, Bill? Can you share the exact location of that?
it's Woodbridge Road, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Just along that road?
more south of Casumnas, probably, what, 5-10 miles maybe?
Yeah, it's the official name. That's the Eisenberg Crane Reserve, I think is the official
Yeah.
name. And if you look
Oh.
on,
Hey, David?
what's that?
Hey, David?
Yes.
Okay, to get to Woodbridge, the best way to get there is just go down I-5, 3 miles south of Twin Cities. Normally, you turn off at Twin Cities there to go due east on Twin Cities and turn right on Franklin to get to the Consumnes Preserve. Just continue down I-5 to Peltier Road. You're going to get off the freeway at Peltier, go underneath the freeway, immediately take a right on the frontage road for 1.5 miles south. You're going to run into Woodbridge, go back underneath the freeway, and go due west about 2 miles, and Woodbridge Preserve is on your left.
Yeah, so what Bill was saying is this is heading south and you get off at Coulter Road. And when he says you go under the freeway, you're turning left to go under the freeway, then you're turning right and still going south. You're paralleling the highway there, the freeway. And then you get to Woodbridge and you turn right and go back under the highway and headed in a westerly direction. And that'll take you to the Crane Reserve itself. So maybe let's talk a little bit about that for those of you who haven't been there. That's the place where you'll find the most number of sandhill cranes because that's their roost. That's where I think the bulk of them go overnight. There may be other roosts in the area, but that you'll find, I have found as many as, I found thousands of sandhill cranes down there at some times. The one problem with that area though is the sandhill cranes are always far out in the field. If you get there early in the morning, they're far out in the field. They get up and they start to fly from there, flying out to the rice fields, over to Consumnes and some of the other areas, starting with around sunrise. The problem that I have with Woodbridge is if you're photographing them and they're flying out to the rice fields, oftentimes they're flying with this silhouetted. so you don't always get the best light when they take off. And they're usually far away. And I found that I've had a hard time. My best shots on that road have been after they have left the wet areas in the roost, and if you go along the road in the rice fields, oftentimes you'll find them just along the road. Now, Bill, that's what you did yesterday, right?
Yeah, yeah. When I went to the actual preserve, there was only 4 of them right there on the other side of the fence. So then I went down the road, which would be going west, I guess it is. And they were on, majority of them were on the right side, which would be the north side of the Woodbridge Road, out in the dry kind of fields. They haven't flooded them yet, were the ones I saw. And they were all the way down to the very end, here and there and stuff like that. So some were up on the levee down at the end of the road. Some were on the other side as well, the south side as well, but they were pretty far out there.
So Bill, if you would, pull up some of those, and we can share some of your images from yesterday, sometime as we go along, if you don't mind doing that.
I don't know how to do it though on this here.
Well, I just, yes.
Let me just, while you're on that subject, let me mention the twice I've been down there, I always go in the afternoons. And the last hour and a half, they come into Woodbridge, and you get birds flying all around with sun on them. You get landing shots, you get group shots. So that's been my favorite time to go, is the late afternoon. So if you're down there, anybody wants to, drag it out a little farther, that best last hour and a half or so is really good at Woodbridge.
Okay, great.
I've got pictures to show.
The best shots are usually in the morning on the left side of Woodbridge Road, and the evening on both sides of Woodbridge Road.
You're a little soft, George. Can you turn up your microphone or something? Yeah, what George was saying, on the left side in the morning, that's where I've gotten my best shots on Woodbridge, is on the left side. Or as Bill was saying, when he was going down to west, on the right side is also the same side. So they, and like Willie says, that they come in the late afternoon, they come back. Now, Willie, I don't know if you know or if anybody knows, that I'm assuming that they don't have those Ranger LED things anymore over at Woodbridge with COVID going on.
They don't.
They don't. Yeah.
No, but
they had Ranger LED ones where they took you out to a spot that you had to go through a gate, and you would see them coming in the late afternoon. But that's
That's the two we used to have on Saturday and Sundays.
Yeah.
I talked to John Siebert earlier this evening. Him and Brian are out there right now, or not now, but they were earlier. And he was saying he was at the preserve and he was trying to take shots, and he's looking right into the sun. So they decided to go down the road and check them out some more. This was probably around 4 o'clock today, 3 to 4 o'clock. So
hey, Bill.
Brian's he's on the session here. What did you find?
Yeah, I'm in my camper. I'm camped right at the
oh, okay.
curve right now. Yeah, we had quite a bit of cranes come in right before sunset. We went down the road, and there's a nice little rice field on the right side going out, and there was quite a few cranes there. And then coming back, so we started here at what's this place called? Eisenberg.
Yeah.
And then we went down this road for about half an hour, and then we ended up back here. And yeah, there's quite a bit of birds. But hey, Willie, you were last winter, weren't you, on that trip with the Audubon Society?
Yes.
What was that road that we ended up on where they were really close to the road. And do you remember the name of that road?
I thought that was Woodbridge.
I don't think so.
No, Brian, you're talking about the ones near the towers, the big tall towers?
I can't remember the towers, but birds were really close. It was very popular. There was cars on the sides of the
There's
road.
another road, I think I can't remember if it's Thornton Road.
Staten Island.
It's what?
Staten Island.
Staten Island, that's right. Staten
That's
Island.
it. That's it.
Yeah. Staten Island, if for you that don't know, is the one that those big giant TV antennas. Staten Island is another area where you see a lot of birds. The only trouble with Staten Island is there's no water or anything. And the fields are kind of not a great shot.
It changes every year. It changes every year. They sometimes flood the fields along Staten Island.
Yeah.
And you can have thousands of birds there.
Yeah, we had good water last year, right, Willie?
Yes, there was good water last year.
Well, so we haven't had much water this year, so I don't know. But Staten Island is if you look on the maps, you'll see it, and it's just where all those and it's it's a one-way road for you to go in and back on. So that's another area that you can go and look for not only sandhills, but all types of other birds.
And I found that to be a really good spot just as the sun's going down, because the sun is behind you and the birds are circling around and then coming in, landing, facing the sun.
That's good to know. So,
excuse me, there's another thing about Staten Island. There is one rice farmer that actually leaves one strip every so often unharvested. And he does it specifically to see how the cranes might respond. And I've got several photos from that area from last year where you can see the strip, you can see birds all over. And so I don't know if it attracts prey or they eat the rice or what, but it's very interesting what this one rancher is doing.
wow.
Another area during the day is Tyler Island. If you go to Walnut Grove, and before you enter Walnut Grove, you turn left on Tyler Island, and you drive along the levee, and you have plenty of fields below the levee, and usually the cranes spend the day there. There's usually a lot of them. If the fields are flooded, you have even more cranes.
Okay. Well, that we've got a bunch of places for you to go. and the migration really, the winter migration goes into March kind of time frame, maybe early March. So you've got a couple more months, and if we get any more rain, who knows? So any other thoughts before we get into talking about other things? All right. If not, how many of you are kind of like new or first-time birders? I can't see everybody, but we've got a few of you. Okay, all right. Well, forgive me. I'd hope that the stuff that I have here isn't too redundant for you, and just chime in and feel free to chime in and add your experiences on what you found for birding, especially you people that have been doing it for, some of you have been doing it a lot longer than I have. But just to know that if you're going to go out and you've not been doing birding, don't be discouraged, because this has got to be one of the hardest types of photography to do. They move a lot. They're often far away. They blend into the background, and they challenge us to use all of our photographic knowledge to capture them. And we wait a lot of time for that perfect shot, and it doesn't always happen. We go out and spend hours and we don't come back with anything. So you can ask any of the photographers here who have done it. And the one other real big drawback about bird photography is it drains your pocketbook. Everybody has these expensive lenses and mounts and everything else. It's about the most expensive type of photography you can do, I think, and all right, so we're going to talk about some of the things that you want to know when you go to photograph them. We'll talk about the birds a little bit, the gear, and some of the techniques. I'm not an expert at this. There are those among you that are far more expert than I am. I'm just silly enough to sit and talk about it. So I thought I'd start with just talk about one thing that could help you the most with your bird photography is learning about your subject. And that's one thing that I have to say, I don't do as much as I should. And people like Willie, you, and others of you, and those of you know the subjects, so much more than I do. But I mean, you can chime in and you can, tell me, knowing about how the birds and your wildlife, how they respond, not only where they are, but if you know something about them, where the areas that they frequent, their habitats, and how they move, you'll be much more likely to get a great shot. And then we already talked about, areas that they frequent. We know that they roost over by the Staten Island area. They do it over by Woodbridge and George. Do they roost there along the levee area too? I don't know.
Most of them roost on Woodbridge, along Woodbridge Road.
Okay, all right. So that's kind of what I've kind of assumed. Woodbridge is where most of them stay overnight.
There's two reserves on Woodbridge Road. One on the right that is usually close to the public, and one on the left. They also roost at the Consumers Reserve.
Yeah.
At left of them, and they are usually very far from the view stations.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so the key is to be there early. Let's say Woodbridge Road, you arrive before sunrise. And you will see them waking up and starting to be nervous. The young ones start to dance, to move around. Some of the young ones start to fly away and come back because the actual signal has not been given. They roost in a large group, but they live in smaller groups, in families. So you can have 4 of them leaving, and the others will leave, let's say, 10 minutes later, half an hour later, or sometimes an hour later. The cue before they leave, it's the leader leans forward. So when you see one bird ahead of the others leaning forward, that's the cue that they will take within seconds. So that's when you get prepared and you start shooting.
So that's great. That's in fact, you went right into what I was going to talk about. That's perfect. I mean, George described, they're out there in the hundreds or sometimes thousands, but they leave in groups, small groups. Sometimes there'll be 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 or whatever. They don't all leave. It's not like the snow geese. For those of you who have been out to like Gray Lodge and you see the snow geese, they go up in, thousands of birds at one time. The sandhills, I don't know, they have buddy systems. And, yes. And some of them, my understanding is that some of them pair for life. Is that correct?
Yes. That's
Yes.
correct.
So you'll have those that pair for life, and then you'll have their buddies going with them. And like George said, the key, the thing that you can do the most to assure your success is be prepared. Like he said, when they start, one of them starts leaning forward, and they start, they get impatient. You'll see them moving like something is going to happen, and they'll start to take off. And they don't take off vertically like a little small bird. They do a run. And that's a time you can, they have to take off, I guess, because of the size. I don't know, they're what, about 5-6 feet tall? Is that right?
Probably. There's two varieties. There's the greater cranes and the lesser cranes.
Yeah.
The greater, I think, can be up to 6-7 feet tall.
6-7 feet. So they're big birds.
All the big ones, and the lesser cranes are probably 5.
Yeah. So you'll see them when they take off. That's a good time for you to try to get photographs, because they don't just leap up in the air. They do a running start. They'll take, 2, 3, 4 steps, and then they'll, leap into the air, and they retract their landing gear, their legs, and take off. So that's a great time so knowing that behavior will generate some good shots for you. Now, exactly the opposite, when they come into an area, they also land. They come in, and you'll see them, and you'll oftentimes hear them, and you'll see them in a formation, and they'll land the same way. They come down, they spread their wings out to slow down, and then they'll put their legs down, and you can catch them in a landing formation. And oftentimes they land in pairs or 3s or 4s or something like that. That's a good time to get another shot, rather than just a shot up against the blue sky. So, yes.
The other thing that you could be very aware of, if it's calm, it doesn't matter. But if there's any wind, they will always land into the wind and take off into the wind. They use that to get air under their wings. So you can anticipate the wind factor too. But oftentimes at sunset, when they're coming in, it's usually pretty calm.
So you guys must be reading my text here. That's a perfect segue. So for those of you that are new to birding, birds are just like airplanes. They take off and land into the wind usually. So if you're standing there and the wind is blowing in your face, I can almost guarantee you'll get a perfect butt shot of the bird. Yeah. You want the wind to be at your back, because if it's at your back, that means they're more likely to be flying into the wind towards you, and you won't get that same butt shot that so many of us have gotten. It's not only true of sandhills, but other birds as well. Let's see. I would ask if you guys have, George or Bill, if you have any shots that you want to share. It's a good time to share some shots. If you have anything, I can put it.
If I can pull something up on my preview, from yesterday. Let me figure this out. Hold on.
I'm gonna hit. So if I hit share screen.
Well, let me get this up here. Whoop.
Just go to advanced sharing options, and then make anybody able to share.
Multiple participants can share simultaneously.
No, not that one.
Yeah, isn't that the one?
It's the one who can share. Oh, it already says all participants. You've got that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Bill, you should be able to.
He's got it.
He's got it, I think.
Is that me? No.
Hang on.
Oh, this is Frank Blocksberg.
Oh, Frank?
Great
That's-
shot.
That's not me. That's a bird.
Oh,
But you shared it.
I didn't mean to show it to everybody right away.
oh, well, why don't you?
Yeah. So anyways, you can share the pictures apparently.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, Bill, did you have some photos you wanted to share? So I guess
No.
what?
I have some up now, but I lost oh, there you are over there. Okay, I have some up on my preview screen now. So
All right. So you have to unshare, right? Frank has to unshare.
I think Bill can, because you allowed multiple, I think Bill can just get right in there.
Bill?
So how do I do that?
Go to the bottom of your screen and there's a green share screen button.
Hold on just a second. I gotta minimize this here. Let me try to find the screen because I lost everybody here. Oh, here we go. All right. Please
On the
bear with me.
bottom,
I'm
share
technically
screen.
challenged here, so. Share screen, just hit the green arrow.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Preview.
Yeah, you started. There you go.
There
You
you
see the
go.
bird?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Okay, and then I'll maximize this here so that it's a little bit bigger here. So I'll just do, so there's gonna be quite a few photos here, but well, I'll just zip through them pretty quick here. So how does that look, all right?
Yeah.
Great.
Beautiful.
That's great.
Okay. So this was actually at the preserve right here. When I got there was 4 of these guys here. So,
So why don't we, you know, you're showing that last one you showed, was that, they were about to do some dancing, Bill?
yeah, they were doing some dancing right there, yeah.
So for those of you who haven't been doing Sand Hills, they'll dance with each other. They'll dance in pairs or sometimes in groups. That's a behavior that sometimes you'll go out and photograph, you'll never see it. But once in a while you'll see them and they may dance for 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes sometimes even. So that's something you watch for, and much like George has said, you'll find one bird starts to move around, and I don't know what's the visual cue for dancing, but you'll find one jumps up in the air all of a sudden, and then the bird opposite them will jump up in the air, and then sometimes 2 or 3 or 4 of them will be jumping all at once, and it's a really neat shot to be able to get.
Yeah, I have some more dancing as well as we go along here. I actually had some good ones, but I missed the focus on it somehow. So, that's the way it goes, I guess. So, but this was another one that's dancing around. Looks like he has something falling out of his mouth there, or her mouth or whatever. So,
Bill,
yes.
Keith wants to know what sort of lens you used to take these photos.
This I was shooting with a Sony, and this is the 200 to 600.
What's your f-stop and shutter speed?
The shutter speed on this one is probably around 1/1600th or so. I was going between 1/1250 to 2000ths. I was just kind of bouncing back and forth. The f-stop was wide open as I can on that lens, and that was between 5.6 and 6.5. It depends where you're zoomed in at on that. So, and then my ISO, I just set to auto on that.
So that's a technique that Bill mentioned that a lot of photographers, wildlife photographers like to use, is to let the ISO be on auto and set their other settings. Then that's one less thing that they have to worry about.
Here's some more down the road from the preserve that was on as you're going down the road on the right-hand side in the field there. And that's where a bunch of them were, and they were actually fairly close to the road here. So this one here wasn't flying. This guy was dancing here, is why he's off the ground and stuff. So.
Were you hand holding, or were you parked and with a tripod?
This was all handheld.
Did you have your optical stabilization on, Bill?
Yes, and set to 3.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, which I don't know if that makes a difference or not, because they have 3 settings on that lens that I have. So.
Yeah.
So So for those of you that are new to this, you'll find, I don't know, Willie, do you shoot with that long lens you got for me? Do you shoot that freehand?
Well, I will use anything I can to stabilize it, whether it's the back of my truck or a tree or whatever, because sometimes when you're moving around, you can't drag a tripod with you. So I will shoot it freehand, but I prefer to use my tripod when I can.
So I was always amazed when I first started doing this, how many of the diehard birders shoot with 500 and 600 millimeter lenses handheld, and they'll do that all day long. And I'm going, I can't hold that lens that long. So the tripod is a good thing for you to use. And also know that sometimes though, when you stick it on a tripod, people think that, I'm kind of taking this out of order. Sometimes people think that, well, because I have it on a tripod, I can shoot as slow as shutter speed as I want. That's not true. The reciprocal, most of you know, the reciprocal is the kind of rule of thumb. Like if it's 600 millimeters, you're shooting 1/600th of a second and so forth. I find that sometimes on a tripod, sometimes you have to go way over that because the tripod itself introduces some harmonics depending on how long the length of your lens, the type of head you're using, and everything else. Sometimes you may have to shoot at 2,000th of a second or somewhere thereabouts to try to get a steady shot. And I think Barbara Summers, you're in the group here, I think somewhere.
Yes, she is.
Yeah, and we talked one time about how she wasn't getting sharp shots, and we talked about, putting something like a bean bag on the lens, and that helped us, minimize the shakes. So that's another technique that you might do. Shelby, are you raising your hand?
No, I'm playing with my cat, so she doesn't disturb me.
So David, can I ask you to follow up on that? Because I've heard you should turn off the stabilization when you're on the tripod. I've heard you should, and I've heard you should not.
Right. That's what I heard.
So what's your opinion on that?
I don't know. The manual says, the Sony manual says you should turn it off.
Okay.
I always leave mine on. I've always left
You leave
mine
it
on,
on?
never turned it off.
You turn it off or leave it on, Bill?
I leave it on all the time.
Yeah, I haven't.
I tried both and I've never seen a difference. So,
Wow.
And I've seen the same thing. I've never seen a difference, and I've done a lot of testing.
Yeah.
Good to know. Good to
and the
know.
reason
There are also some lenses will turn themselves off once you put them on a tripod, but I don't know which ones those are. So
I don't know.
anyway, George, what's your finding with Nikon lenses?
What do you mean?
Do you turn your image stabilization on or
Yes.
off?
Yes, it is always on.
It's always, even when it's on a tripod.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
With most newer lenses, you don't have to worry about the button being on or off. So, what is the most important? After many years of try and failures, what is the most important, I think, for a bird in movement is the shutter speed. With a long lens, it's very difficult to get anything sharp below 1,000th of a second. The best would be 2,000ths of a second. So it's better to push the ISO, and especially with modern cameras, you can push the ISO and recover the noise in post-processing. But that allows you to use very fast shutter speeds and the lens wide open.
So Steve Perry is a fellow wildlife photographer that I follow, and he likes to shoot around 2,000th of a second or so, 2,000, 2,500, something like that. in those general ranges. Bill, what did you take this one at? You know?
I'd have to go look. It's probably around 1/1600 handheld.
Okay.
Because everything I pretty much showed you here is all handheld. It's just, they were, especially when they're in the field, you had them over here dancing, and they had them over here dancing. So I was just out in the street, just kind of doing everything handheld. And this was back at the preserve. These guys were just on the other side of the fence. And then, so.
And this was with your 1.4 extender or without?
No, it's at 600.
So this is a straight 600 millimeter shot. Which,
and I cropped in just a little bit because there was a guy just down below, the back of another one below it. So it wasn't cropped in very much on this one.
Yeah, Willie?
Yeah, one thing I found, because when I put my camera lens on a tripod, I'm carrying probably 15 pounds, and I can't go very far with that. But I have found some professional grade monopods that can handle up to 25 pounds, big lenses. And when you put a monopod, you can wrap one leg around the monopod and hold it close to your body. And it's amazing how stable it is. And then you're easier to move around. And the monopod can be planted anywhere and tilted. I've probably used my monopod more than a tripod. I like the tripod, but that monopod is so much more functional because it's lighter and easier to move around with.
All right. Hey, I've never done that, but that's a good tip from Willie, who shoots an awful lot of them. And here's a strange bird.
That's not a bird, yeah.
Oh, sure it is. It's camouflage.
It's a cat bird.
This guy was just sitting there, and I had to take a little picture here, so.
Plus, you got the dog, right?
Yeah, this one here.
That very well-fed dog.
Yeah. Wow.
So this when I was leaving Woodbridge, they have that, as you're going towards the highway, they have that little field off to the left in the parking lot. I looked out and I go, oh, it's kind of a weird looking dog. And at first I thought it was a fox or something. So I pulled over. I didn't pull all the way in. I pulled at the entrance. I didn't want to scare it away. And I got out, and this guy was just kind of, tripping around the parking lot a little, the field there. And he saw me. That's when he was looking at me when I got out. And then here's another one. I got another one. I guess it didn't show up on here, but I have a bunch of them just kind of tripping around the field a little bit. So he looks very well fed too.
Okay.
He's a beautiful animal.
Yeah.
That's a nice one.
Yeah. That
Where did you camp?
One of the last shots of the day, and it's just kind of icing on the cake when I left. And the lighting was pretty good, and lucky enough to get out and get a few shots of this guy. So, and this was handheld as well, probably 0.002 of a second, I think, or something.
So Bill, did you happen to see a bald eagle? A friend of mine was just down there the other day. She saw a bald eagle.
No, I didn't see any there. I was looking for them. I saw a couple up at the rice fields a few days ago.
Oh.
2 immature ones out there on Ellis Road. Feeding off of something in the pond. And then I have those on my Facebook page as well. Then it was funny, I didn't realize, but the ravens, I guess, harass them, fly them, and they're flying around, and the ravens are chasing it and everything else. So unfortunately, it wasn't very good lighting. It was real dark, kind of rainy, misty, and all that. So, but
all right, great.
You can see bald eagles at and Sacramento Wildlife Refuge.
Yeah. You probably see more, Rachel, if you're going to look for bald eagles. I've always seen a bald eagle or two up at Gray Lodge.
Yes.
Oh.
So
we actually have a mating pair here at Lake of the Pines.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've tried. All of a sudden they just appear flying across the lake, and Steve's twice been in the boat, in the water, and they've come down and pulled a fish right off the back of the boat. Twice. And I've never seen it, but.
If you want to see a bald eagle in California, you have to go to Lower Klamath Refuge. Just
there?
Lower Klamath Refuge.
Oh, Lower Klamath? Oh.
Yes.
yeah.
In California and Oregon, south of Klamath Falls.
So the Tule Lake area
Yes.
there's the area that George is talking about is just south of Klamath Falls. There's
Yeah.
always I haven't been there in a few years, but I went there for several years in a row, and there's like one mating pair I would see all the time, and they're not afraid of you, you know.
Yeah.
They'll just sit on up there, and they'll be looking at you. You know, you feel a little threatened because these guys are big birds. Well,
The first year I went to the Klamath Refuge, around 1 pound, I counted 100 eagles.
Wow.
Whoa.
So that was when the fields were flooded year after year. The last few years, because of droughts, they didn't flood the fields the same way. But you can see them across the ditch in tall trees where they build nests. And you can see them crack branches to build their nest. And they are not very far from you. They are maybe 50 yards, 70 yards from you.
yeah, they're very close. I've had bald eagles that I've shot up there that I was at the base of a pole, and they were just right above me. They just looked at me. There's a really good every year there's an event called Winter Wings in Klamath Falls, and that's how I got introduced to that area. I don't know what they're doing this year with the COVID, but if you're interested in seeing birds up there and having good talk, Winter Wings is an event you might look up and think about going to.
Remember, it's in February.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things I didn't talk about, and I should have mentioned it, if you looked at like the shots that Bill took, try to position yourself for a nice angle on them. I found, at least for me, the quarter angle, not straight on to their faces and not completely sideways, but if you go to a quarter angle, I found that for me that's been one of the best ones. Let's see, how do I get, I'm going to share, let's see, all right, let's see, desktop, are you seeing, let's see.
We're seeing what you're doing.
You see this shot?
Yeah.
All right. I mean, this was also a shot I took a number of years ago at Woodbridge, and and I like this angle. It's not quite sideways. It's a little bit of a quarter shot, and it gives you a good perspective. I found that, interestingly enough, this kind of angle works for a lot of moving things: race cars, birds, people, dogs. If you take the shot head on, you don't get, that whole sense of their body. So think about that, and think about the background. One of the things that I know, when I first started shooting birds, I got so excited just to get the bird. I just take the shot, whatever I got. But think about the background, whether, and sandhill cranes are kind of hard because you can see their colors aren't so much different than some of the background colors. So if you can get a contrasting light or some colors that will complement them, think about that. This was nice because there wasn't, oftentimes they'll have a lot of trees behind them. And, it's hard to differentiate the bird from the trees. So think about that as you go on. Let's see. All right, where am I now?
David, can I just a question? When they're moving in front of you, are you trying to pan with them, or do you wait until they get right in front and then you snap the shot?
Most of the time I'm panning with them because, you know, a panning shot gives you a lot greater chance of success. And by panning with them, I mean, the birds, sandhills are, you know, unlike the little tiny birds, as you know, that are sitting on the tree, you never know which way they're going to go. But sandhills, you know, they don't change direction instantaneously. So panning is a great technique for sandhill, and it allows you to shoot with maybe a little slower. Sometimes I like to experiment, and I try to even go very slow with my shutter speed down to maybe sometimes 800 or thousandth of a second, see if I can get some motion blur in the background. Now that's kind of a tricky, you know, shutter speed to be playing with, but panning works is a great technique. And the technique that I always talk about is I do a pan by planting my feet in the direction of where the bird is going to end up. And I start with my body twisted, facing where I start to shoot the bird. So if the bird is moving to my right, I'm unwinding my body to the right as I pan. And by doing that, you know, I'm easing the tension. Versus if I point my feet at where the bird is at when I first started shooting, and the bird's flying 90, 120 degrees to my right, I'm twisting my body, you know, trying to get that smooth pan. So that's a technique that I use, but panning I find I use that a lot. I don't know, George or Willie, you guys pan most of the time?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. You have to think yourself like a hunter. When you are hunting bird, you shoot ahead of the bird. And same thing with the camera. You aim ahead of the bird, and you follow the bird. If you don't follow the bird, once you press the shutter, your shot will be only the tail of the bird. You will have missed half of it.
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, David.
Yes.
Panning is so easy to practice. You can practice on gulls at the beach. You can practice on anything that'll move. And the more you practice, the better you get of putting that bird in the center of your field of view on your lens. And when you can do that, it almost becomes second nature. A little practice goes a long way. And these big birds are good ones to practice on.
And it's really, and it helps a lot with panning because you can, you know, oftentimes we'll get the shot with the bird, like a big bird, like a sandhill crane, they'll be right in the middle. If we're close, you know, all of a sudden we realize we didn't leave them enough nose room to where they're flying towards. So when you pan, it's easy for you to control. Oh, I don't want that much. I want more room in front of the bird. So you can adjust your panning as you move.
If I may, there's another very important technical aspect is autofocus. Most of the camera are advertised with so many autofocus points across the frame. But usually this is when your lens is fast, like f4. Once you go with slower lenses, like the zooms, 5, 6, 8, the number of autofocus points is reduced to basically the center of your frame. So if you want to get autofocus, keep the bird in the middle of the frame. Because the extreme autofocus points won't work. So once your bird is on the side of your frame, you will lose autofocus. So keep the bird in the center, focus on the bird, and crop your frame, your shots in post-processing.
So that's George brings up a very good point, and maybe we'll I'll jump around a bit. Autofocus is I don't know any wildlife photographers or especially birders that manually focus. If they do, they got to be really good. So autofocus is your friend here. And Janice, do you ever manual focus?
Not on a bird.
So I found, at least with the Sony cameras, the two most important autofocus selections are wide area and spot focus. And when do I use those? I use wide area when the birds are up in the sky. There's a lot of contrast. So let's say the birds are in a blue sky. If you set and you try to do a spot focus, it's really hard to get a spot focus on a bird flying up in the sky. But if you put it on wide area, it just picks them up just like that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's true with Nikons, George. Is that the same?
Yeah, it is the same.
Same thing then. So if they're up in the sky, it's a clear sky, use wide area. And then when they start coming down, I go to a small spot focus, because when they come down, you've got trees and you've got all these things that get in the way. So you want to go to a smaller area to make sure your focus is on the point that you want.
With Canon, you can choose 10 different focus options, and the perfect one that I find for moving birds and flight shots, they offer a 9-point focus, which is probably a quarter of the area of your screen, but it's much easier to put on the bird than a spot focus. And once it picks it up, when you have your proper settings, and I don't want to go into this, but there are settings in your camera which will keep your lens focused once you've locked it in. And you can move all over and it will keep it focused. But that's with working with the Canon.
It's the same for Nikon. The nine focus points works very well with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think on the Sony, they call that an expanded focus point. So they're all the same kind of, it's a smaller area with some points around that small area that you're talking about.
Right.
Another item is the back focus button. I don't know if any of you use that, but it is.
The what?
Back
focus.
Back button focus.
Oh. All of my cameras are set to back button.
Yeah, that's the best way to autofocus.
Yeah.
Separate focus from exposure.
So I was just going to talk about that a little bit, and I'm glad George brought that up. You'll find that many, if not most, of the photographers use back button focus. And of those of you that don't know about back button focus, instead of using your shutter button to do your shutter and your focusing, you're disassociating your focusing functions. You're putting the focus on another button, and it's usually in the back of the camera, and that's a custom function for most of the manufacturers, that you assign a button to be the focus button. So you using your thumb, for instance, to hold and control focus, while your shutter button doesn't do focus anymore. And it's always awkward when you first do it, because you forget, oh, I forgot to focus. But once you get used to it, you'll find you never want to go back. So you might want to think about doing that if you don't already. Another thing with with these continuous focusing modes, Canon calls it AI. Nikon calls it, what do they call it in Nikon? the continuous autofocus.
It's continuous focus.
Oh, continuous focus. All right. So same thing with Sony. So the one thing, none of the manufacturers, it's not 100%. It's never 100%. And the more difficult the bird is in terms of if it doesn't have distinguishing or high contrast marks or whatever, that focus tracking, the continuous autofocus, if you hold your shutter button down or your back button focus down, it'll lose it oftentimes. And so what I found is you want to use it, hit the focus, track them, and then if you're tracking them for more than a couple of seconds, oftentimes I'll have to do what's called a bump focus. I'll let up really quickly and reacquire focus because they just moved out of range, or I don't know what it is. Technology isn't perfect. So I find all the time I'm doing a bump focus. I hold the button down, keep it in focus, and then I let it up. You know, especially even if I don't see them going out of focus, just letting up it momentarily and then hitting the focus button again will give me a better focus. So try doing a bump focus. That's another technique that you might want to do.
David, can I add something?
Yeah.
I agree completely with you that it isn't a sure thing, but sometimes people have a difficult time at first acquiring their subject. But
yeah.
There's a little trick I've learned, and that is I quickly determine about how far away the subject is, if I can, and find a tree or the ground right under the bird to focus on. Then when I lift my lens up, I've got the right distance. Because if you're shooting a bird in the sky or a sandhill crane flying sideways, sometimes it's hard to find it, to get it in focus enough to perceive it. But if you'll focus quickly on the ground, which is a known object, you can't miss that, or a tree that's not too far the same distance, focus on that, then swing your lens up and you've got it. And then you just have to home in on it.
So that's Willie brought up a really good point. If you can help yourself with the autofocus by doing that, because he knows that the tree is right where they are, or if you've got a bunch of birds flying and you've got another, let's say there's a tree that's about equal distance like the birds are, you can help your autofocus by pre-focusing on an area that'll get it pre-focused closer so that the lens doesn't have to hunt so much. So try to get the autofocus set before you focus on something that doesn't have as good a chance of getting focus on. And then the other thing that I found, that one of the things that's really hard when you start using long lenses and you're zoomed all the way out to say 600 or something like that, it's sometimes hard to find the bird in the sky. So if you're doing that, one of the things that I found helpful is you sight along the top of the lens, not looking through the viewfinder, but looking over the top of the lens. Let's say you have a lens hood that has a screw, and that screw is sticking up out of the top of the lens and it's in the middle. So I use that much like a gun sight. So I'll hold it up, I'll look over the top of the lens, and I see the bird is right over there. Then I quickly look in my viewfinder, and then I found the bird. But if you try to hold up the viewfinder and you're waving the viewfinder all around, I can't find the bird. Look up outside along the top, and then when the bird's right there, look in your viewfinder. The other technique is, if you're using a zoom lens, zoom out wide and then find the bird and then zoom back in. So those are, because if they're by a tree, it's not as hard. But if they're in the air, you know, those two techniques might help you. And anybody that in this group can, you know, feel free to chime in. I wanted this to be interactive because I don't know everything. I wanted to talk about aperture. One of the things that we should be aware of is when you're shooting with these long lenses, you're shooting with a very narrow depth of field, number one. And oftentimes with birds, single birds, it's not such a big deal. But with sandhill cranes, they're always in groups or pairs. And if you don't shoot with a smaller aperture, like f/16 or something like that, you'll end up, let's see if I can, share. Let's see. Hang on here. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now, all I need to do, oh, here. Sorry, it's so cluttered. So here are two sandhill cranes. It looks fairly decent, but if you look at this shot, you'll see this guy's in focus. This guy's just so ever slightly out of focus. If you look at that, you look at him, and that's just, you know, when you're out in the field, you think, oh, I'm shooting at f8 or f11. That's plenty, you know, they should be both in focus. But when I got back and you look at it, you know, I was disappointed because this guy here in back was just ever so slightly soft compared to this guy here.
Mhm.
So, especially when you're shooting groups of birds like sandhill cranes, where they're in, you'll see a whole group of them. Think about shooting at a smaller aperture, f/16. Maybe sometimes you might have to go down to f/20 or something like that. I know you're fighting light, and we're always shooting these birds in early morning or late in the afternoon, but your focus will kill you more than anything else will.
Mhm.
So think about your aperture, especially when you're shooting them in groups. Okay.
You know, David,
Yes.
even if they're not in groups, I have made the mistake many times of having maybe a head in focus and a tail is out of focus, bird in focus. So it isn't it isn't even just a group of birds. If you've got you know, too large of an aperture, you can have part of the bird blurred and part of the bird sharp.
So Janice, do you have any shots that you're
Not on this computer.
Oh, okay.
It's upstairs. I if I had known, I would have had my hard drive down here, but
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. So yeah, I mean that's a very good point that Janice makes. Now, if you wanted to be creative, you know, and to try to get a shot where the eye is in focus and part of the bird's not, that's one thing. But usually that's pretty hard on a bird.
yeah.
So, you know, think about using the smaller apertures when you do this.
David, Keith has a question.
Yes.
Do you use smaller aperture f/16 at the expense of a much higher ISO and therefore more noise?
Well, I think if I'm shooting a group of birds, a group meaning two or more, I think I would err more on the side of getting the focus and letting the ISO go wherever and the noise go whatever. I don't know. I think, George, you agree with that?
Yeah, I do agree.
And
There's also, if you use a tele-expander, a teleconverter, it's good also to stop down at least one stop.
yeah.
So, and yes, you have to sacrifice ISO. So, or speed. So if you want to play with luck, you can also use a slower shutter speed. And if the birds don't move too much, you can probably get something good. It's bird photography, as David mentioned, is very exciting, but also very frustrating. You have to shoot a lot and get a few good shots. But once you get the good shots, you want to do it again and again.
David,
Yes.
one thing that might be helpful, in fact, I've never changed. I started off shooting with aperture priority so that I could quickly change my aperture. I would see what the ISO is adjusting to, know how bad or good it is. But by shooting an aperture priority, you can preset. You can go out and you can say, okay, I know in this situation, that size bird, about f8 is good. So I just set it. And then depending on the light and the time of day and all that, then you have to deal with ISO. But shooting an aperture priority is very helpful, especially in the beginning, because then just one twist of your wheel, you can set it to, F12 if you want, or wherever you want to go with it, depending on the light. And it makes, I found it's been very easy. I started doing that 10 years ago and I still do it today.
But then you might end up with a very slow shutter speed.
Yeah.
Well, that you have to put in, you have to evaluate that as you're shooting. You're exactly right, because you can lose that. And that's why I tend to shoot on the, more open. I like to shoot it, 7.3, 8.1 in that range and not go too high.
Okay. So here's another thing that those are all good points that Willie brings up. Here's another thing. I don't know how many of you ever paid attention on your auto focusing to the responsiveness of your autofocus.
Yeah.
Sony has, and I assume all the other ones have the same thing. You can make your autofocus be super responsive, or you can make it slow. Now, when I first started shooting with birds, I thought, well, I want it super responsive. I always wanted to lock on really quickly. But birds fly around these things called trees. and if you put it on super responsive and the bird, you're tracking the bird autofocus, all of a sudden the bird goes behind a big tree trunk or something like that, and you've made it all super responsive. Guess what? Your focus jumped from the bird to the tree trunk.
Right.
So the thinking is exactly the opposite. You might want to set your autofocus response to slow, so that it doesn't, it'll pass behind the tree trunk and it will be slow to change, and your autofocus will stay on the bird.
That's a very good point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What about buffer?
What about what?
Buffer.
Buffer. What about buffer, George?
So when you shoot birds, you shoot in bursts.
Yes.
And so you will shoot many images, and they take some time, depending on your camera. They take some time to be loaded. Many cameras have two cards, and often the second card is used as a backup. When you use this picture, you slow down the burst speed of your camera. So remove the backup feature from your camera. So you have only one image saved to the main card. That will speed up autofocus and the burst shots. And you can use buffer as well.
So then that gets to the point. If you're shooting birds a lot, I know they're expensive, but using a ultra high speed 2 card, or the faster cards that come out, they're expensive, but they're worth it, because one of the things you want to do when you're shooting birds is to shoot at a high frame rate. If you have a camera that shoots 3 frames a second or 4 frames a second, that's all right. But you'd be surprised how much a bird or an animal moves in a third or a quarter of a second. And I almost dare say that if your camera only shoots at 3 frames a second, you're just going to have to be lucky that you get the right pose, because they just in a third of a second they'll be on the tree, and a third of a second later they're out of the frame. So when I first got my Sony A9, it shoots at the highest frame rate is 20 frames a second, and I thought, when am I ever going to shoot at 20 frames a second? But I shoot at 20 frames a second all the time, because it's amazing how much an animal moves in a 20th of a second. And now there are cameras out there. I think one of the Fuji cameras shoots at 60 frames a second, and we're talking about still images. We're not talking about video,
Yeah.
So, the only downside to that is you have to have a large memory card, and you have to spend a lot of time going through lots of shots.
When I got my A9, I put mine on 20 frames a second. And I found really that the size of the animal is a big factor, because I actually ended up turning mine off of 20 frames a second for larger animals, because to save myself some buffering time, and I wasn't getting enough difference in that 20 frames of a second. So
because the larger animals move slower.
They just move slower, and I was coming home and going through 5,000 images, and I'm like, what's the difference between this one and this one? And I put them up on my big monitor and I examine them. And so after I had a couple sessions of that, I decided I'm gonna turn it down, because I don't want to go through 5,000 of the same images. Well, they weren't all of the same, but you get the point. And so on a larger animals and like the big cats and stuff, I turn it down, because I was also running into problems, even though I have the fast, expensive cards, of doing the 20 seconds or 20 frames of seconds. I was burning through batteries and burning through cards and the buffering. So it's just something to keep in mind.
What do you turn your shutter speed to? I mean, your times per second to?
It depends on what they're going on. I never go below 10. And I think the A9, you can go 10 and maybe 14 or 15 and 20. So it depends on the animal, and it depends on what's going on.
Okay, great. That's good advice.
I would add too, my 7D2 only does 12 frames a second, but 12 frames a second sounds like a machine gun.
Yeah.
And I ran the same thing about buffering and spending too much time going through pictures, because I usually start at 5 frames a second. Canon offers a couple different options, less than 12. And so you make a great point.
So these are all things you have to think about. The size of the creature you're shooting, how fast do they move? Do you need to shoot at a high frame rate or not? Here's some other things that I've learned. We're always with our cars, and one of the things that we should never do is shoot over the hood of your car, especially when your car has been running. Because guess what you get you get heat waves. And you're gonna go, well, I got this great shot. How come it came out looking so distorted? Because it's a natural place for you to be, and it's just about the right height. And you rest your camera on the hot hood of the car, and you take this magnified shot, and guess what? You get all these wavy lines. So think about not doing that. Think about when you're in your car and you're at Gray Lodge and it's cold out. You've got the heater running and you're inside and you shoot outside, your motor's running. Well, guess what? You've got the same thing. You've got heat waves. So if you're going to do that, you want to stick your lens way outside the car to try to minimize that. And also think about the surfaces. When you're shooting with these long lenses, different surfaces have different heat retention. If you're shooting at birds and there's an asphalt road and it's the height of the day, well, guess what? The asphalt gets hot and you'll throw up heat waves. And if you're shooting with a long lens, you'll see that. Versus if you're shooting at Consumnes and you're shooting across a pond, well, the water is generally cooler. So you're not as likely to get distortion shooting a long shot over water. Think about the areas. Neither are you, if you're shooting over a grassy area, that's going to be much less of a problem for heat than shooting over a hard surface. So think about those things when you're out there shooting. Okay, I'm gonna try to get wrapped up here, and then I don't know, other people may have questions. I wanted to talk a little bit about gear. 200 to 600 is the lens I use, the same one that Bill uses, and many of you, Willie and George and Janice, I know you all have long lenses, and people always ask, what kind of focal length do you need? There's never enough focal length. That's the problem. It doesn't make any difference. You always wish you had more, but at 600 with a 1.4 extender, that gives me 840 millimeters, which is, reasonable. If you start to get out more, say 1,000, 1,200 millimeters, then you have factors such as, is it smoggy? Is it clear? If they're that far out, you have to have a really super stable support. It's no longer a handheld shot. It's a tripod locked down. If you have a camera that has a mirror, you may have to lock up your mirror. I think Barbara and I talked about this, and we talked about, mirror slap. And you think of mirror slap only affecting a slow shot, but with a long lens, super high magnification, I found that with that kind of a camera, I'd have to turn off my mirror and do it that way. So 2x is great. That would give me 1,200, but I lose 2 f-stops. You only lose 1 with a 1.4. And most people I talk to seem to gravitate to the 1.4. I don't know how many of you, Janice, do you shoot with 2x?
No, I actually, when I had my 500 prime, I ordered a 2x, and it was so hard to focus because you lost so much light that I sent it back. But I hardly ever even now use my 1.4 because I notice image degradation. I just shoot the 6, and if I can't get it with 600, then I just don't use the 1.4 that often.
Okay. And
yes, to back her up, I've done a lot of experimenting because in the spring, I monitor 3 different peregrine falcon nests on private property. The closest one is 315 yards away. The furthest is 425. Well, David, the best thing you ever taught me was mirror up. I can lock my mirror up. I use a a cable release on the tripod, can't have any wind, and at 325 yards, it's amazing how sharp a shot I can get. But I've controlled those type of things.
Yeah.
Because the mirror does a lot of motion. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But even with the 1.4, I get a better picture without it at 300 yards than with it, because of what Janice brought up about image quality.
All right. And then the one other thing that I always talk about is, like, if Willie's taking that long shot, there's a lot of magnification of very small motion there. And one thing I found that's helpful sometimes is having a bean bag with me, a small bean bag. If I put that small bean bag on top of the lens, it's amazing how much that helps to reduce those minute harmonic vibrations with that small bean bag. Try it sometime, take a long shot and experiment. If you don't have a bean bag, just put your hand on top of the lens and you'll be amazed. Sometimes when you're shooting that far, like Willie's shooting, a little thing like a bean bag or just putting your hand on the lens, absorbs vibration. So for those times when you're shooting at those are really long distances, Willie. Okay.
I have a question that has nothing to do with this. Do you
Yeah.
mind? The app where you can know where the stars are going to be, that I think the night photographer did 2 meetings ago. Do you know the name of that app for looking where the stars are at a certain date?
Oh, you're talking about photo pills?
Pills.
Photo pills, Shelby.
How do you spell it? P-I-O-L-S?
Yeah, photo, just like photography, photo pills, P-I-L-L-S. And
Thank you.
I don't know how many of you saw Rick Eshelman put out there this coming Monday? The
21st.
The 21st is the Jupiter and Saturn are going to be virtually right next to each other, the first time in 400 years.
And it won't happen for a long time. Is anybody going to photograph that on Monday night?
They try.
I'm sure there's a bunch of us that'll try, depending on the weather. Otherwise, you'll have to wait another 400 years.
Is there a special spot to go photograph that by chance?
I don't know. Anybody have a?
Actually, the next one, we only have to wait 8 years.
Right.
That's
8
right.
years.
It's
I'm
going to
gonna
be in the
be-
southwest sky, I think.
I'm going to be up at the college, at Sierra College, the
Nice.
parking lot 6, I think it is, by the library. There's a great spot. Whole southwest sky is wide open.
I'm not going to be right there with you.
Okay, awesome. You guys are going to be there too.
Yeah. What time does it start and what time does it end, do you know?
Wasn't it about 5 o'clock that it was most visible?
I think it's as soon as it gets dark.
Half hour after sunset.
Tonight, it was beautiful at the, out there by the Sand Hill Crane spot. It was pretty cool with the moon. And then, of course, it's not the conjunction yet, but it's cool to see them a little bit of distance.
Did you get it, John?
Yes.
I knew it.
Yeah.
We each got some, and if you zoom in on Jupiter, you can see the 3 moons that are in the straight line, and then you can definitely see the rings on Saturn.
Oh, cool.
All right. All right.
All right, party up at Sierra College.
Yeah.
David?
Yes.
Champagne.
Hey, David?
Yes.
In today's Auburn, or the Journal, or the Union, Alan Stadler has an article about the coming up alignment.
Oh, in today's which paper?
Today's Union.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. So that's good stuff. Maybe we'll all join you up there, John. So I'm just going to end with the one thing on tripods. For those of you that are doing this, you've heard me before. Don't buy those $30 tripods because you need something that will really hold your camera steady. And if there's anything that you should invest in besides your camera and lenses, it's a good tripod, because that'll last, long before after you've gotten your next camera and the one after that. People have asked about ball heads. Ball heads are great for landscape. They're really hard to shoot for birds and things like that. And nowadays, there's a lot of gimbal heads that you can buy. I even have one that I bought for like $100. I have a new one coming. Bill has that same gimbal head. And for those that, if you see them tomorrow or wherever, you can look at it. A gimbal head is a really worthwhile investment because it'll allow you to move your camera in any direction. And once you let go, it stays there. Versus a ball head, you have to unlock it, and it doesn't allow you to track smoothly. You're going to add a little friction, and then it's too much friction, not enough friction, and it doesn't stay in one plane. So a gimbal head is something you might consider if you're going to be doing a lot of this. We didn't talk about the focus limit switches on many of these cameras. They have a focus limit. Some of them are 2 switches or 2 settings. Some of them are 3 settings. One setting is for the whole range from way out far to close. If you have it set there and your bird or whatever you're shooting is close by, you don't want to have the camera hunt through that big range. So there you might put it on a close setting, a limit setting. So think about using those. There's also a mode setting on many of these lenses. One will give you, will control the motion for vertical and horizontal. Usually that's number 1. Number 2 is usually only vertical, which I think that's what you'll use often if you're on a tripod, because you're panning, with birds. And the Sony has a number 3, which is the same as number 2, except that it doesn't show you the motion as you look through the viewfinder. It acts just like number 2. It just doesn't show it to you. That's all I have.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
The art show, that's going, anybody?
The what?
The show, the art show at the Nevada City Framing.
Yes.
How's it going?
Kathy? Dave?
It would be Dave.
Okay.
Yeah, the show is currently. And check it out at the frame shop, but it might not be open when you go. Her hours are fairly sporadic, but stop by. It looks pretty nice. And thanks again to Kathy and Ellen for hanging it this time.
I was thinking about going there and doing a Facebook Live just to get people knowing about it, just for fun.
That sounds great.
Yeah, that sounds like a cool idea. Go for it.
Thank you.
So do we have any questions? I don't have anything else to talk about. And any other questions from anybody?
If you want, I can share some images of cranes.
I'm sorry, what, George?
I'd love to see him.
If you want, I can share some crane images.
Yeah. Yes, we'd love to. So I think you should be able to share, George.
Okay, so let me try. Do you see the screen?
No, you're not. There we go.
Wow.
Now we do.
There you go.
Now we see it.
Suzanne.
That's nice.
What time of day did you take this?
But states the cranes returning to Woodbridge Road. And I think it's probably west of the reserve. If you know Woodbridge Road, west, half a mile west of the reserve, There's big silos. Just west of the silos.
Oh, yes, yes.
Of fields, when they are flooded, you can usually see quite a few cranes there.
So this is a really nice shot, the one that George just showed. And one of the things that I think that we don't often think about, there's a little bit of a backlight to that shot that you just showed, George. And it's not, you know, frontal light, but I love the light at the back of their wings and then on the extremities. So think about that. That's a really beautiful shot.
I shoot backlighting a lot. I like the sun, the light going through the feathers. And with modern cameras, with the range of the dynamic range they have, you can really open the shadows in post-processing. It works very well. So this one was my lucky morning last year. This is early morning at the Woodbridge Road Reserve.
So how did you get this? How did you take that shot? What were it was a kind of a high key shot?
It was high key because it was a little bit foggy. The sun is in front of me, above. I was lucky to have a group of cranes staying a little bit longer than the others. They stayed about an hour longer, which allowed me to use much faster shutter speed. And that helped a lot. And I increased the high key look through post-processing. So this is the same time. That was also from Woodbridge Road, also the field just west of the silos. The field that was flooded, but a finger of land was going into the water, and I was able to hike in the middle of the pond, basically. I was still in the mud. I was not in water, but I could position myself in front, seeing the rising sun over the valley.
Beautiful.
See some of these other ones, Michael. They're really good.
This is the same morning.
You've got much more. This guy's really good.
This was also Woodbridge Road Reserve, a very foggy morning, very, very little light. So I pushed the ISO.
So hopefully, if we go out, any of you go out tomorrow, we might have some of that same fog.
Yes. So at the time, we didn't have the. There's a feature in Photoshop called dehaze, which is very helpful when you have a foggy morning. I didn't have it when I shot this shot, but it should have worked pretty good. This was also last year. This is either along Staten Island. No, I think that one was Ryder Island. And that's once the crane take off in the morning, they either get to along Staten Island Road or to Tyler Island. And they will spend the day feeding. Some of them can be quite close from the road. Yeah, another thing that is worth mentioning, don't get out of the car. If you get out of the car, they will go away. Your best chance to get close-up shots is to stay in the car. So you use a sandbag to hold your lens along the window sill, and you should be fine. This is the morning of the when I was almost in the water. And this is the same morning, the foggy morning. So it turned out a little bit like in post-processing, I made it a little bit like a Japanese style painting.
Beautiful.
And this is the morning I was almost in the water when the crane took off. And I think that's it. That's all I have now.
Those are beautiful.
So here's what we all have to aspire to now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
those are gorgeous.
Those are great. Those are great shots. Okay. Do we have, let's see. I'm looking at the chat room. I think we answered all those questions in the chat room. Anything else from anybody? Anything anybody want to show? No?
Another thing, if I may,
Yes.
there's other birds than cranes. Especially during the day, there's an amazing amount of variety of birds in the delta.
The Delta.
Continuous Reserve is a great spot to shoot small birds, ibises.
Yeah. I think, Bill, didn't you get some nice ibis shots?
Yeah, that was out in the up by.
I'm losing you.
I think.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Now I can hear you.
That was in the rice fields out by Marysville. I was actually out there Sunday, I think it was. They were out there, but on the wrong side of the road. The day I was out there, they were on the side of the road where the sun was at my back, so it would illuminate their colors pretty good. But that's the problem with birds. They don't always cooperate. So.
One question.
There's tons of them.
Bill, where did you camp?
What's that?
Where did you camp?
What do you mean by camp?
Did you camp down near Woodbridge in your camper?
No.
Brian, he's down there.
Brian's down there right now.
Oh, that's right. It was Brian.
Yeah, I'm right next to the little the south unit on the preserve.
And there's campground there?
No, just on the side of the road.
Okay.
So there's many other kinds of birds, and that the one bird that I got last time over by Consumnes, that what was that bird, Bill? I can't remember the name of it now. That one that hovers.
Oh, the kite?
Right.
Yeah, the kite.
Yeah.
That's a really, and I was going to ask you, Ann, about that. They're pretty common, that kite.
No, you don't see them very much at all anymore. So that's really cool if you got a good picture of a kite.
Oh, didn't you see the picture of the kite I had on Facebook?
No.
Well, here, I don't know. Let me see. Maybe I'll share one more with you, and then unless we have other stuff. Let's see. Can you see this picture?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is. At any rate, let me see. This was a kite at Consumnes, and they hover. For those of you that don't see them, they hover like helicopter birds, and he was facing away from Bill and I. He was just hovering, and then I caught him just momentarily. He'd glance back. I thought, I wonder if he'd do it again. And this is where 20 frames a second makes a big difference, because he'd look back just momentarily and look right at me. Yeah. But that's a bird that I thought it's an interesting bird, and to know that they do that, I didn't know that he was going to turn around. I thought he's facing the other way, and he'd never ever look at me, but there he did. Yeah. So.
That's cool.
All right. Okay. Unless there's anything else, it's.
Who's going tomorrow?
if any of you are there tomorrow unofficially, we'll see you there.
Wait, we have a question here, Yolanda.
Yeah, Yolanda.
It's not a question. It's just a really big thank you. This was a really nice meeting. I'm home just like you guys. This has been the best meeting I've had in 6 months. You know, I did a lot of work meetings, a lot of Zoom meetings. This was most interesting, beautiful photos, lots of great advice. Thanks so much, you guys.
Oh,
Glad you could join us. And I just want to thank you, David. This is probably better for me than the last 2 or 3 meetings we've had, the presenters.
Well, I mean, we have great photographers. I mean, you know.
We have great presenters, but the way this sort of came about with the interactivity and the relaxed approach, I really like this.
Yeah, this was really nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, thank you, everyone. They were amazing photographs.
Thank you, everybody.
I was going to volunteer if people catch pictures of birds and they can't identify them, I'd be willing to help you identify them. There have been a lot of shots being shown at meetings with way wrong names. And so color at me if you want to have at least a better name for your bird.
Well, I'm going to take you up on that, Ann.
Okay.
And I'm guessing January's category for fauna is going to be very competitive.
Oh, God.
How many bird shots will we have in January? I bet some really awesome ones. So I'm looking forward to it.
Nice.
All right. Great. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, David.
David.
Great.
All right. Thank you,
Give us a
everybody.
little hand clap.
Stay warm tomorrow, everybody.
All right. See ya.
Where are you going to be at tomorrow morning?
Who?
David, Woodbridge?
Oh, I don't, I'll swing. I think I'm going to swing through Casumnas to see what there is, but it's sounding that the trend is sounding like Woodbridge is the spot. I mean, that's where you found them. That's where Kathy and Barbara went. And I might take a stab at that and also at the, what's that road, Staten Island or whatever that is, George? Staten Island, is that it? That's the name?
Yeah.
Yeah, I might go there. I went there a couple times and there wasn't much, but maybe, I don't know what it'll be like this year.
Nothing.
Nothing?
Sometimes there's nothing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
It depends if fields have been flooded or not. And
Well, we just had these rains, and I don't know how much. Can you tell me how much the rain makes a difference if we have a lot of water? Does that guarantee we'll have a lot of birds necessarily?
it does make a big difference in the way that there's less bird concentration in one spot. So the birds can be almost anywhere.
Yeah, because I know somebody told me that at Gray Lodge there's like almost no water at Gray Lodge.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
When I was out there, there was a lot of water out there.
Yeah, somebody told me that they had been there recently. I think.
Melanie Prusa has been
David.
putting pictures up on Facebook with, thousands of birds and lots of water.
Frank, you're still on. Did you tell me that? I don't know. But
Frank, are you on still?
I see his name.
Yeah.
So yeah. There's a lot less water at Green. No, that's me, Frank Buck.
Oh,
Can you
okay.
hear me?
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was at Gray Lodge a week ago or something, and the water is way down. There's still water, but the birds are much further away. I've never seen it so low.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So
So,
so David, I'm going to show.
what?
Uh-oh, he muted himself.
Hi.
So Kyle, did you, as an experienced photographer, did you get stuff out of this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I took down some notes on my phone.
Yeah.
Shutter speed and the focus modes, and yeah, I'm excited. This will be like my first time photographing birds, so it should be really fun.
Cool.
All right.
All right, cool. So where are you going to start out tomorrow morning?
Well, I think you guys are saying Woodbridge, right? Or Consumnes? Is that the plan? Woodbridge.
Yeah, well, Consumnes comes before Woodbridge, so it's real easy to swing by Consumnes and see what there is.
I would definitely stop there first with the morning light. It's
Yeah.
incredible. The light's incredible.
That
Well,
would be
the morning light at the ponds at Consumnes, the map I sent out, that morning light is really nice because of the angle, you know,
Right.
kind of somewhat just around the corner, just in back of you a little bit. And that nice, it's a nice light if their birds are there. You know, but
What time do you think you'll be there, David?
I'm going to be there by 7.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Bruce.
Leaving about 5 a.m. or how long does it take to get there?
About an hour and 20 from here. From my place.
Yeah, it took us an hour and a half the other day.
Yeah.
But we got there about 10 to 7, and it's not worth getting there earlier because you really can't see anything. I mean,
Sunrise isn't until about, what, 20 after 7 or something?
right, 7:20, 7:30.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Kyle, that road is Bruceville Road where the ponds are.
Bruceville Road? Okay.
Yeah. All right. So
Also, we were on Franklin, and Franklin, there's some ponds on Franklin too.
Yeah.
Franklin. Oh, Franklin's the main road that goes to the preserve, right? To the
Right.
Yeah. Then you go to is it Desmond? I think that comes off of that. There's some ponds.
Yes, right. That whole
Right.
area there. You just have to drive around.
But Bruceville's where David and I were last year, and they had some really nice light there on Bruceville Road. And there's some ponds right there. But I went there. There was nothing there the other day. So.
If you want to, do you have my cell phone, Kyle?
I don't think I do, but I can jot it down if you don't mind.
650-619-8819.
Okay.
So,
Bill, would you mind giving you your cell phone number as well?
Yeah, you ready?
Yeah.
707-373-4482.
Okay, great. I'll send you guys a text tonight. That way you have my number, and maybe we can just meet up sometime tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, Bruceville would be a good place. I mean, because then you could just leave from there and go straight down to Woodbridge if needed.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I would love to shoot with some pros and get a better idea of how to do all this. So it'd be fun to kind of tag along.
no, then we have to ask Janice and George if they're going to be there. If you want to
Yeah,
shoot.
I'm gonna be there. I was just gonna ask you to repeat your cell phone number.
Oh, 650 619
619.
8819.
Okay, got it.
You guys better go to bed.
Yeah. And Janice.
Is that off of the Twin Ridges Road?
Twin Cities.
Twin
Cities Road?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know where it is, don't you, Bruceville, Janice? We were on Desmond Road that one time.
Right, but didn't we first get off at Twin Cities?
Yeah, you take off Twin Cities Road, I think it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, so is that where you guys are gonna go first?
Yeah, then you go right down, then that runs into Bruceville Road.
Right, okay.
Bruceville Road.
Yeah, you hang on right on, you stay on Twin Cities, you go over the railroad tracks, you get to Bruceville on the right, and you turn right. And then that takes you to the corner of Bruceville and Desmond. That's probably where we'll go first.
Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 ponds right there, right next to each other.
Right.
I expect to see our Facebook page totally covered with bird pictures this weekend.
I have a question for you, Janice. How many hours have you got?
Hours?
Yeah, you said you have a friend that's like,
flying?
yeah.
Just a couple hundred.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not a huge amount.
Well, it's nice
And
to
I did it before I had kids.
Also, I heard you were a pilot.
Yeah.
Oh.
She's a Renaissance woman. She does
I've been in
everything.
aviation for a long time, but then when you have kids, you know, I learned to fly when I could spend my grocery money on airtime. And then when you become responsible, you can't do that anymore. So
Yeah, we can try.
well, yeah.
Drones are cheaper than flying manned aircraft.
Well, I actually started to get current again a couple of years ago, but it is so expensive.
No, it is. But yeah, I think I should tell you my Cherokee that I bought, I paid
Yeah.
$7,000 for it.
Oh
But
my
that was-
God.
That was long,
Did
long
it have
time.
wings?
Yes, $7,000. I flew it for 3 years. I sold it for $7,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
but that was back a number of years ago.
Yeah, and I'll bet it would go a couple $100,000 now.
No, I think the Cherokees, you can buy those things for like $20,000, $30,000.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
There you go, Janice.
There you go.
Well, you know what I really liked? I really liked doing aerobatics. That was what I was interested in.
Oh my God.
So,
Well, I'll watch you.
Yeah, me too.
no, it's really fun.
Yeah. All right.
If you could hold your cookies.
All
All
right.
right. Have a good time, you guys. Talk to you
Thanks.
later.
Thank you.
Okay.
See ya. Bye.
Yeah.
Y'all later.